Introducing Addy, a game-changing AI maintenance bot for property management. Addy can, in any language, triage and data capture every maintenance issue, with full voice version coming soon. Addy has learned from over 850,000 reactive maintenance issues carried out by AddyUvo, the leading maintenance call handling service. To sign up for updates and our next testing cohort, go to adiuvo.org.uk/ADI.
Welcome back to Season 12 of the Propcast. I'm your host, Louisa, and this season we'll be discussing all things smart buildings and the digital future.
This week, I spoke to John Rogers, Chief Innovation Officer for CoreLogic, and Kirby Brendsel, Flagstar Bank's VP, Environmental, Social and Governance and Sustainability Director. As we all know, the real estate sector contributes to 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. And on this podcast, we discuss what real estate is doing to combat this. John and Kirby explain the importance of providing data analytics around climate risks to allow companies to measure the financial impact of climate change up to the year 2050. That's helping companies, cities and governments to put in place mitigation plans. The housing market is worth over $43 trillion, but with sea levels projected to rise by 1.4 feet, increase in severe weather events, solutions like CoreLogic can help insure mortgages and mitigate risk. I was shocked to hear that for every $1 you put into property resilience across commercial or residential, it equates to $6 in disaster recovery if a weather event occurs. In this episode, our guests share how financial and strategic perspective is all about doing the basics first. The first thing you need to do is get the baseline, see where you are at, then setting up the strategy, and the work really starts after that when you start working out, right, how can you actually tackle these big issues? But you can't tackle the big issues straight away, so baby steps. You should tune into this episode to hear more about climate solutions to help with mitigation plans, housing affordability and insurance, and how our guests collaborate together to create a rising tide that lifts all ships. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it, and enjoy.
Today on the podcast, we are joined by John Rogers, Chief Innovation Officer from CoreLogic, and Kirby Brendsel, Flagstar Bank's VP of Environmental, Social and Governance and Sustainability Director. Now, as we all know, real estate sector contributes 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. So today we're going to be talking about what is the real estate world actually doing to combat this. So our guests today will be talking us through this. So thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show, John and Kirby.
Fantastic to be here, Louisa.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Louisa.
For those not familiar with CoreLogic, it is a leading provider of property insights and innovative solutions working to transform the property industry by putting people first. Using its network, scale, connectivity and technology, CoreLogic delivers faster, smarter, more human-centered experiences that build better relationships, strengthen businesses, and create a more resilient society. Now, those who don't live in the US, New York Communities Bank Corp Inc. is the parent company, God, that's a mouthful, of Flagstar Bank, which is one of the largest regional banks in the country. So you can sort of guess the scope of the size of the business. The company's headquartered in Hicksville, New York, with regional headquarters in Michigan. And Kirby, correct me if I'm wrong, in 2023, the company held $118.8 billion of assets and 84.9 billion of loans, deposits of 88.5 billion, and total stockholders' equity is something like 11.1 billion. So pretty big bank. Is that right, Kirby?
Directionally right, and we continue to grow and expand and make sure that we increase and improve our business all the time, Louisa.
Yeah, I guess we've got listeners from everywhere, so it's always good to sort of explain what we're sort of working with here. Now, everyone listening in, our guests will be talking us through all things climate and housing affordability and what solutions there are out there. We're going to be hearing how you can protect home ownership and factor in locations which are at climate risk, which sadly today seems to be ever increasing. And we're also going to be hearing about what population movements have been occurring because of this. And obviously, we're going to be finishing off talking about the housing shortage. John shared with us there is a 4.3 million housing shortage, which is obviously changing daily, weekly, monthly, and it's quite a few things that are involved in this. So obviously, how long it takes to get bloody planning permission for developments. There's obviously a slowdown in development due to the economy. I guess obviously not enough materials out there, or materials even going up with inflation. So there's lots of things we're going to address here. And John and Kirby are going to be sharing how Flagstar and CoreLogic are helping together to address the issues of climate change and housing affordability. So enough about me. I hope that's given you a little bit of insight to our guests who are joining us today. So why don't we start off with John? Why don't you talk us through your journey to CoreLogic? You started off your career journey in the UK where you studied, and I think we were in the sunny city of Glasgow. Is that true? Before you headed to the big bad world of consulting.
That's right. The sunny city of Glasgow. If we see the sun, we're not too sure what that is up in the sky. But I was an aerospace engineer at Glasgow University, moved down to London, worked for British Airways for a number of years. So traveled the world, picking up brand new 777s and 747s from Seattle. And then ventured into, sold my soul and joined a consultancy, a management consultancy, and worked across finance, retail, pharmaceuticals, logistics, and then joined IBM out in Australia, came back to London for a few, and then now back in the United States working for CoreLogic. So I run research and development for CoreLogic, and I've been here for over 10 years, taking new solutions to the marketplace, really. So it's a very fortunate journey, Louisa. So it's been good.
And Kirby, we obviously have a brief introduction to your current business, but you've obviously had a pretty impressive career route. Obviously, you've done your time in consulting too at Deloitte, but can you share the audience a little bit more about you as well? But also, more people looking to get into sustainability and wondering, what are the routes to get into it? If you can share a bit with them, that'd be fabulous.
Sure thing. Yeah. So absolutely. And thanks, Louisa, again for having me. I really appreciate it. And so my journey went to the College of William and Mary in Virginia on ROTC scholarship, which is like an Army scholarship. And so after that, spent my time in the U.S. Armed Forces as the big oxymoron. So I was a military intelligence officer. But when I got out, I pivoted my career. So I found, what I'm most passionate about. I'm really passionate about making a difference, whether it's in my local community or whether it's in what I do. I went back to grad school at Rice, and I was fortunate after going to Rice to basically land a job with Deloitte in their consulting group and work there for 10 years, where I focused on a very natural progression, like focusing on energy, so oil and gas, power and utilities, then alternative energy, and then branching off into things like sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, then eventually ESG. And it's one thing to consult. It's a lot of fun. It's a very interesting line of work. But it's another thing when you finish that project, you make that presentation to be able to do the implementation. And so I was actually very fortunate to kind of pivot out of consulting to go ahead and start working for companies actually doing sustainability work around adaptation, doing things like ESG reporting for a lot of companies in the built space, like real estate companies, as well as banks and investment firms, which landed me here at Flagstar, which is great. And really, it's an awesome opportunity to make a difference. And I know we'll probably talk about this more here in a little bit, but my big advice on anyone in terms of like, if you're passionate, follow your passion. Go for the things that you want to do or that you can make a difference on, even on a small scale related to sustainability.
Yeah, well, I hear you there. We did our second year salary report, which showed obviously what a lot of people are looking for, and it's very much looking to get into a business with to get into a role with, I guess, take more of a social responsibility role, very much into a sort of mission-led company. So we're seeing that increasingly more at the moment. And can I also just sort of say, when your brief introduction, you have covered a lot of things which businesses probably didn't really spend much time even looking into. And you mentioned, first of all, the whole ESG, which are three very different things. And then you mentioned diversity and inclusion as well, which is like a whole new sort of kettle of fish, right? So I love you I did this and that. To most people, they'd have like a huge team sort of concentrating on one component of each of them. So how you were sort of one of the first movers looking at how we can tackle that in a big business, whether it be a bank or whatever company it could be, is impressive. So I think anyone who's listening in who wants to learn more about this, check out Kirby's profile, have a look at it. I'm sure he'd be open to any questions. There might be a large price tag on it though, but I'm sure he might give you a bit of free consultancy.
Totally. And it's one of those things, like it's a nomenclature. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Happy to do it, Louisa.
Now let's talk about the relationship between Flagstar and CoreLogic. Where did this first begin? How did you guys first meet? I don't know. Kirby, is this one for you or John?
Well, just like the project, I think we're happy to tag team this answer. And so, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more in a little bit, one of the things that we thought was very important for us as an organization last year was to really kind of define our footprint on around preparedness for climate change. And so I think this is, and pun definitely intended on this, I think this is very systematic within the field where a rising tide floats all ships. And so it's one of these things where we could partner to deliver a better product, something that was more informed around climate change and climate change scenario analysis and our footprint of existing bank branches and headquarters. And so, branching off and doing a joint project and looking at this for our footprint has been awesome. And John, I know you're totally going to tag team this with me, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been very fortunate, Louisa. Flagstar's been a client of CoreLogic's, I think, for over 20 years. We provide data analytics and tools that power their origination and servicing. And then just as Kirby was mentioning, we provided something called climate risk analytics, which is a insight that allows companies to measure, model, and mitigate the financial impact of climate change. So initially up to the year 2050. And so Flagstar used that to understand with their commercial footprint, their branch network, what risk factors and what's the financial risk of their commercial real estate. And then to put in mitigation plans to protect that estate. So it's, we've just been very fortunate to working with Flagstar, and that they're always a leading lender that we love to work with.
Amazing. I love that. And so it takes you up to sort of 2050. I've seen these, that's the analytics you're providing sort of change every week, every sort of month on this, depending on like what's happening in the seasons. God.
What we're providing is something, the actual financial metric is something called average annual loss, which is just really a ratio of a building's risk in terms of reconstruction costs. But we provide quarterly updates because obviously we're looking out, nearly 30 years. We've got a newer model coming out next year, which actually goes up to years 2075 and 2100. So that's, again, just understanding the risk profile. So it's not frequently updated every day, but it really just allows companies to understand their financial risk. And once you provide a financial number, people tend to lean in, companies tend to lean in and do something about it. So with Flagstar, they're understanding what to do in terms of providing resilience to their commercial real estate.
Totally, John. And the only thing I'd add on to this, just to close it out, is just like, you have to start somewhere. So yes, it's a constantly evolving field. We're constantly working to try and improve our data and make things better from our read. But, having that baseline, having somewhere to start with, getting an initial read so that you can drive on with your strategy and plan from there, John and Louisa, is immensely important.
Yeah, I guess also every sort of investment manager out there is trying to work out, right, what deals are looking good. And obviously you mentioned it's about people, of course, it's about the environment, it's about protecting people. And obviously everyone with the economy as it is also looking at the figures, right? So I guess any sort of investment asset manager listening into this, check out our CoreLogic and check out the case study around Flagstar. Right, let's talk about climate change sort of more broadly. Like, Kirby, you've been in the space for some time. You're based in the US. You've worked for global businesses. From, I guess, a Flagstar perspective, how they sort of tackling it, whether it's like the strategy, the solutions. You mentioned you've been working on this large project with CoreLogic. Is that where it begins? Is that what else is there you can share with us?
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about climate change, when you think about sustainability, there's no one answer that solves for all, right? You got to bring all of your different tools and assets and resources to the table to work on this collectively. And this is going to be a red thread that goes through our entire discussion, not just on your own, but with others, making sure that you have those good partnerships and you have good teammates that you can work with. But really, this piece is just one of the pieces within our overall structure in terms of what we work on. And we really have like a strategy that's focused on three kind of big climate change and environmental sustainability related efforts. And that's one, we focus on reducing the impact of our actual business. So minimizing our footprint, making sure that we're doing the right thing. We create a culture that's committed to this, so making sure that I can harness the power of the whole, all of my employees to work on it. And then we really try to think about our business and what can our business do to make sure that our services are meeting our customers' needs when it comes to topics like thinking about, environmental sustainability or climate change or other things related to environmental social governance.
Amazing. And what are the big challenges? What are the holdups, I guess, internally or say in the banking world or working for such corporate sort of business? Like those 3 points, they're three big things to tackle, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's not a light lift. There's a lot that goes into it, Louisa. I think the biggest thing, and this is something that I'm always very cognizant of, and I'll use my little dad joke here because I'm a dad. It's about my dad, but my dad or others are always asking me, what do you do in this job? What are you working on when you focus on things like environmental social governance? And I always, are they like, are you out there hugging trees and kissing llamas or giraffes or something like that? And I'm like, no, this business, and John and I are both going to talk a lot about this. It's all about data. It's all about using data, improving your data, capturing your data to make sound strategic decisions that you can drive things forward. And that's paramount to what we do. And the things that go into that are all the standard data related topics that you would see anywhere else. It's capturing all that data, housing that data, improving the quality of that data, disclosing and reporting on that data. And then I think it's really about the journey, right? And so I always think about data and how we handle environmental data or sustainability data or ESG data within an organization like a journey. And so it's getting the data great, starting to disclose the data, but then using that data to tell a story, to really think about like, where are we? Where could we go? What things do I need to look for? Where was that leak? Where are we using the most energy? Where do we need to be prepared to move that generator to the third floor? Things like that. Like that's really kind of like what we focus on. Although I do like trees and I do like animals, so those are great things too, but it's really about the data.
And I guess that's where sort of CoreLogic sort of ties in very, very nicely, isn't it, John?
We are a data analytics company, so we literally collect over 22,000 data sources on everything to do with properties, everything from a fax of a fax, when you and I buy a property, all the way through to point cloud data, which is satellite, aerial, and structure sensors, and literally everything in between. So with all that great information on property, so we have first floor height, material type, topology of land, combine that with all of our peril and hazard information, so winter storms, hurricanes, storm surges, and so forth. Combine it with all the financial metrics, so valuation models, reconstruction costs, which have been used in the mortgage and insurance industries to make financial decisions each day. And then the final piece is we combine it with greenhouse emission models from the United Nations. There's a group called the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change. Combine those four ingredients together, and we produce a predictive model to help Flagstar, in this case, measure, model, and mitigate the financial impacts of climate change to every single property. And probably just worthwhile to mention, literally two properties beside each other can have a completely different risk profile. So depending on the year it's built, building permits that have been issued, to the topology of the land, it really matters to get down to each and every single structure, in this case in the United States. So the chief scientist of NASA actually said to us he never expected to get to this level of granularity in his lifetime. So we were a little bit chuffed with that statement. So
pretty happy with that. Yeah, I bet. And would obviously CoreLogic, you are global, right? You've got customers globally. You got them.
Yeah, North America, Australia, New Zealand, and penetrating Western Europe. So a footprint in France, Germany, and UK now. So
amazing,
steadily growing.
But I was going to say the uptake must obviously depending what's obviously in. I'm bringing this up because you mentioned how like two buildings could have a completely different sort of risk profiles. And if I'm looking, my office is in Mayfair, very lucky for, but I'm looking around, every building here is old and crumbling and very old boilers and probably not very sort of energy efficient. You've got the Cadogan and Grosvenor sort of estates. They're beautiful to look at, don't get me wrong, but like I imagine in certain cities there's a huge opportunity for you to sort of get involved and get people to use your analytics platform. Like if you compare to what, say, in guess we're not really at such climate risk here, which we're lucky for, apart from the rain showers we get. But other than that,
I can give examples. So take Florida, take Miami-Dade County, which is a paradox. It's probably the hottest market in the United States. I think it's about 15 points above the home price index right now. And also, it's actually the most riskiest county in the United States in terms of climate change.
From keeps moving there. I had this conversation last week with a bunch of from New York who have all just like, over COVID moved to Florida. And don't get me wrong, I had the best childhood memories from going to like Orlando and stuff with my family. But I asked them, I was like, it's beautiful there, but why would you take your families there when there's hurricanes, it's sea level, or everything like that? And housing prices are going mental. The same thing with Miami.
Firstly, Miami is a fantastic place. It's a beautiful place, fantastic place to live. The paradox is, and where we can help. So we're the model of choice for the Florida State Hurricane Commission. So they will use those models to understand the financial impact to every single home. As an example, that helps shape ordinance regulations, where in some areas you now have to build a 5-foot seawall if you want to sell your house, because we're passionate about protecting home ownership and protecting basically the financial stability of the real estate economy in the United States. So that's just one example where local areas are protecting home ownership.
Interesting. And then people could just decide whether or not they want to go there. Is this in levels of importance of why people, I guess, relocate or move? Is that people now factoring climate change a lot more than they used to be? Kirby, this is probably one for you. I don't know. Must be.
Yeah, I mean, I always look at that question like there's a lot of different decisions that go into where you're siting your properties or where you're kind of placing assets within your portfolio, whether it's for personal reasons like where you want to move yourself and or where you want to place your next bank branch. And paramount, of course, is business reasons, right? You want to make sure that you're representing and you're doing your best to make sure that you have a footprint within your local community. But for me, I think about these things around climate change and where we're kind of doing things around siting is like, yeah, maybe I'm not the tip of the spear. Maybe I'm not the first thing that they think of when they think about where they're siting a property or where we can go for a new bank branch or for a new headquarters. But maybe I make that spear sharper. And so the fact even that, when we're thinking about these things, that we do evaluations or we do considerations or we include within our kind of our initial investigation decision aspects related to climate change, most prevalent flooding, right? Thinking about like, is this in a floodplain? Is this not in a floodplain? Will we have to buy insurance? Will we have to buy more insurance? That does impact the bottom line. That makes an actual balance sheet impact when you think about what you have to do for that property. And climate change is integral within that. And just adding to the discussion that we're having before between you and John, you're thinking about those micro markets, those little areas where, you can make a difference. But even for me, and right now my portfolio is within the United States, but it's spread throughout the United States. And the impacts of climate change and the things that are really prevalent just for us within one country is so widespread in terms of what you need to think about, what you need to consider, that it's hugely important to kind of think about that data, think about where you're citing things before you put something in.
Do you think and John, we spoke about this when we first had a call about the education piece. Obviously, you educate people on climate change. Who else? There's so many different moving parts. So you've got the people involved in the insurance. You obviously have the people who are like underwriting it. You got the investors. You got the people buying the property, everything like that. What more than how can we educate people better? I mean, it's all on the news. The media obviously love advertising these sort of things, but how many people do you think are actually spending time learning about and thinking, right, what's the real long-term impacts? Because I think a lot of people right now are thinking the short term.
I think there's still a fair amount of education to be done. I think, unfortunately, climate change is often over politicized, becomes a little bit abstract. At CoreLogic, we're fortunate because we have such a great network with lenders, insurers, real estate, and MLS boards. It's really working with many of those stakeholders to shape how do we get to all the consumers, all the homeowners in the United States, and we're fortunate that we can do that at CoreLogic through those relationships. So about 3% of the inventory transact each year, obviously through lender network, you get to the majority of consumers and the insurance network. So really, how do we provide simple, intuitive metrics like a kind of credit risk score to you and I? How do we provide a climate risk score to every single property, but make sure it's understandable, doesn't cause panic in markets, or vice versa? We're trying to kind of coat it with rose-tinted specs, so to speak. So a lot more work to do. We're working with many of those constituents to kind of really push out the right information that people can make decisions on. I still think the primary reasons to move is, obviously, as you said, the short-term high interest rates, affordability in cities, it's driving, the macro trends of population across the United States. So, but yeah, there's certain elements you can see in California and Florida in certain areas that you think that this is one more criteria in terms of climate change.
Yeah. And Kirby, what about you? We're looking looking forward, what's on the horizon for you and your organization around climate change? Are there also, outside of CoreLogic, around the analytics side, are there any other solutions out there which you've been sort of following? I don't know whether you use them, or what progression are we making when it comes down to technology?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, it's not just a one item thing that really works to fix this. You have to bring all of the best things to the table to really kind of address it. And for us, as far as like climate change, I mean, it's building on where we've come from. So making sure that we've got like our data and our projects and our things really kind of down pat. And to the last point around really it's around engagement and education. Like, how are you reaching out to make sure that you do those things? I take that very seriously, like making sure that we have the training that's out there for our board and for our teammates, like our other employees within the organization, disclosing all our information, getting all of that out there so that we can get it. And then really, as far as your question right now on projects and things that we're going from here, it's trying to move from kind of this low cost, no cost solution into things that are, really more higher end types of projects. And I always look at it, and I know this is a kind of a pedantic or a really kind of basic way to look at it, but it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You remember that from Psych 101, where it's like you do the basic needs first, like food, sustenance, et cetera, and you're getting up to self-fulfillment at the top of the pyramid. We try to move up that pyramid when it comes to climate change or adaptation or sustainability. Do the basic things first, get those really down pat, and then move up to things like, are we thinking about renewables? Are we thinking about, what else can we do within our business to really think about what green loans are we making? We're doing those types of things, but just continuing up that pyramid to add and add and add more of these higher level tasks so that we can bring everything together to really address the solutions.
Yeah. And John, what about, I guess, looking forward for CoreLogic as well? You mentioned you have new products that are coming out. In terms of you're developing your products, what are your sort of customers that are changing what they want, like the Flagstars of the world? Are people asking for more data around like a certain area of your product? Or what are the major, I guess this is what our audience will probably want to hear, what are the major data points you can share with us, which you've seen over the past 5 years? And any, you mentioned you can forecast up to 2050. Is there anything you can share with us as well? Maybe not trying to scare the audience, but what we need to be thinking about?
With the climate risk analytics solution in and of itself, so imagine we're working with many federal agencies to shape policy. So take the example of the Federal Reserve Board. They're assessing the banks as if it was the year 2050, simulating a hurricane event across the Northeast state to understand all the credit risk profile in terms of likelihood to default, cost of default, and the credit risk rating. So that report should come out later this year to understand some of the practices that the banks are taking. So the FRB's sole responsibility is the financial stability of the US housing economy. We're helping lenders like Flagstar, obviously, as we discussed today, in terms of understanding risk. We're helping retailers understand their supply chain in the future. So where do I set up distribution centers? What's the risk profile of my current estate? We're helping insurers set premiums for you and I to protect our home. And just as important, help set incentives to lower those premiums. So think about wildfires in California. Your fence needs to be 12 foot away. You need to take brush out from your deck, and that's going to reduce your housing insurance. So that's climate. In terms of just the broad based within the mortgage sector. We support, data analytics across the origination and servicing process. So it's really, from a lender's perspective, is take touch time and cost out of that process to provide an amazing experience for the buyers and sellers as they move across the United States. So we're rolling out major big solutions that underpin those two massive processes. So hopefully making it easier for you and I to purchase a property in the United States, really. So yeah, a lot coming out.
Amazing. Well, everyone watch this space. I'm conscious of time here. Kirby and John, I've loved having you on, but I also wanted to get our audience a little bit more familiar with you. And how we end the podcast is sharing a little something about yourself. So whether it's before you say go out and sort of talk to whatever audience it is, share something quirky with the audience. Do you have a walk-up song? What's a funny sort of fact about yourselves? I mean, you both have daughters studying in well, one's in Belfast, one's in Edinburgh. That's not the funnest fact, as wonderful as your daughters are, I'm sure. But like, what, anything quirky you can leave the audience with?
Yeah, I mean,
Debbie, you go first.
All right, thanks, John. We appreciate it, John. Yeah, no worries. So I think and speaking of my daughter, I think my favorite walk-up song is one that she introduced me to recently, just over our last holiday, which is a song titled Kirby. It's a rap song by an artist named Aesop Rock. And for somebody with a name like Kirby, it's not that often that I hear a song with my name in it. So I was very happy about that. It's a very fun and positive rap song. But it was interesting to watch the video and learn that it was about his cat. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and take that. It's a very good song, and it's a very good walk-up song. So I think that's what I'm going to go with.
So I had thought of one, but then you mentioned my daughter in Edinburgh. So she's 18 years ago when she was born, first child. A little bit of complications. My wife Kirsten had a C-section. They handed me Nina, my daughter, and the midwife said, "Look, we're just going to take care of your wife. Just come out into the sort of open plan floor of the hospital in London and just look after your daughter for 30, 40 minutes." I said, "That's fine, perfect." Went out, and I obviously, in shock and joy, the midwife just says, "Remember, skin to skin." So being an engineer by background, I literally took all my clothes off apart from my underwear. So anyway, people are wandering past me, and the midwife came back and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I just meant your top. So yeah, I think just reminded me of that story. Just kind of popped into my head there. So
Beautiful.
That's a photo moment, John, right there. Beautiful.
That's so good. Well, thank you for ending this podcast on that note, John. But on a serious note, everyone listening in, I was sharing with Kirby and John that I think these are obviously housing affordability, what's happening with climate change globally, how everyone is affected. This is an extremely important podcast to talk about, and actually demonstrating that our data analytics and solutions out there which can help businesses and are helping businesses find this data to help you, whether you're sort of buying, whether you're insuring, just future-proofing, everything like that. So it's extremely important. So thank you all for listening in. But of course, thank you to John and Kirby for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Louisa. Great to partner with you as always, John.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kirby. Thank you.